What if a people, once free, were bound in chains forged not of iron, but of bricks and despair? For 400 years, the descendants of Jacob had toiled under the iron heel of Egypt. They had arrived as honored guests, a small family seeking refuge from famine. But as generations passed, memory faded, and a new Pharaoh arose, one who knew not their patriarch Joseph. His heart, twisted by fear and a lust for power, looked upon the multiplying Israelites, not as a blessing, but as a growing threat. The Israelites, a people whose heritage was freedom, were enslaved. Their days were a relentless cycle of sun-scorched labor, their nights haunted by the sting of the taskmaster's lash and the gnawing ache of injustice. Their very lives were measured in the bricks they made for Pharaoh's monumental cities, monuments to a king's ego, built on the broken backs of a chosen people. Their collective cries, not merely whispers of despair but piercing laments of anguish, ascended like smoke from the brick kilns, reaching the very throne of the Eternal, who neither slumbers nor sleeps. Pharaoh, a god in his own delusion, saw only a vast, expendable workforce, numbers to be manipulated, spirits to be crushed. To stem their burgeoning population, he decreed a horrifying edict. Every newborn Israelite son was to be cast into the Nile, a watery grave for innocence. The river that nourished Egypt now ran red with the blood of their children, a grotesque sacrifice to a tyrant's paranoia. Hope for many had withered into a fragile memory, a faint echo of ancestral promises lost in the clatter and dust of their bondage. Yet, even in the deepest abyss of human cruelty, when human strength failed and despair threatened to consume all, the divine architect was at work. From the heart of this very oppression, a deliverer was chosen, not with the might of a warrior king, but with the quiet courage forged in the solitude of the wilderness. His name was Moses, a Hebrew child providentially rescued from the very Nile meant to claim him, raised in the gilded cage of Pharaoh's palace, only to flee into the stark beauty of Midian's desert. There, tending flocks far from the clamor of empire, he encountered the Almighty. It was in the searing heat of Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, that the Lord revealed himself to Moses in a burning bush, a flame that blazed yet consumed not, a paradox echoing the mystery of the divine. A voice, not of thunder but of gentle fire, spoke from its heart, laden with the weight of an unbreakable covenant. I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I have heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I am concerned about their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the hand of the Egyptians and to bring them up out of that land into a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And so began the epic of Exodus, a tale not merely of a geographical journey from one land to another, but of a people's spiritual rebirth. It was a cosmic confrontation between the fleeting tyranny of man and the eternal sovereignty of God, leading to a path forged by impossible miracles, consecrated by sacrifice, and ultimately sealed by the very visible hand of the living God. The plagues, a symphony of divine wrath. Moses, burdened by his stammer and haunted by his past, hesitated, questioning his worthiness. But God's call was unwavering. Accompanied by his eloquent brother Aaron, chosen by God as his voice, Moses returned to Egypt. They stood before Pharaoh, not as rebellious slaves, but as fearless emissaries of the Most High God, proclaiming the divine mandate. Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go, so that they may hold a festival to me in the wilderness. Pharaoh, his heart swollen with pride and fortified by his own claim to divinity, scoffed, "Who is the Lord, that I should obey him and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and I will not let Israel go." His refusal was not merely an act of political defiance, it was a declaration of war against the heavens, a challenge to the very cosmic order. Then began the series of 10 plagues, each a thunderous crescendo in God's mighty symphony of judgment, each meticulously designed not merely to punish, but to systematically dismantle the very foundations of Egyptian power and their vast, sophisticated pantheon of gods. Each plague was a divine argument, a direct challenge to Pharaoh's authority and the false deities he and his people worshipped. 1. Water to blood. The serene, life-giving Nile, revered as the god Hapi and the very source of Egypt's prosperity, turned to crimson, its waters undrinkable, its fish dying. The blood-red river, once a symbol of life, became an emblem of death, a grotesque defilement of a cherished deity. Frogs. Swarms of frogs, associated with the goddess Heket, symbol of fertility and birth, invaded every corner of Egyptian life, from palaces to ovens, defiling every sacred and mundane space, rendering life unbearable. 3. Gnats or lice. The dust of the earth, a common element, transformed into biting gnats, afflicting both man and beast, a direct assault on the earth, god Geb. The Egyptian magicians, once confident, declared, "This is the finger of God." C. Flies. Swarms of flies, a plague of teeming insects, tormented the land, yet miraculously, in Goshen, where Israel dwelt, not a single fly appeared. This marked a clear, visible division of divine protection. 5. Livestock epidemic. A devastating pestilence struck Egyptian livestock, horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, and sheep. Yet not a single animal of the Israelites perished, a stark, undeniable testament to God's selective judgment. Boils. Painful, festering boils erupted on Egyptians and their animals, an agonizing affliction that humbled the priests and magicians who once claimed powers of healing and purification. 7. Hail and fire. A cataclysmic storm, a terrifying fusion of fire and ice, descended from the heavens. Hailstones of unimaginable size, mingled with lightning, destroyed crops and trees, striking down man and beast. Yet in Goshen, where Israel resided, not a single stone fell, not a single flash struck. Locusts. Swarms of locusts, vast beyond measure, devoured every green thing left by the hail, plunging Egypt into a famine, a prophecy of total desolation. This was a direct assault on the harvest gods. 9. Darkness. 3 days of tangible, suffocating darkness descended upon Egypt, a blackness so thick it could be felt, a profound, chilling silence that paralyzed life. Yet, light still miraculously shone in the dwellings of the Israelites. This was a direct, humiliating assault on Ra, the mighty sun god, the paramount deity of Egypt. With each plague, Pharaoh's resolve would waver. His heart would soften under the weight of suffering, only to harden again, like tempered steel, fueled by pride and the illusion of his own omnipotence. His sorcerers, initially able to mimic some plagues, eventually conceded defeat, acknowledging the supernatural origin of these divine onslaughts. Yet, Pharaoh refused to release his grasp on his human property. The plagues were not just destructive, they were profound statements of God's sovereignty. Which of these awe-inspiring events reveals God's nature most powerfully to you, and why? Share your insights in the comments below. The shadow of death, the Passover, the 9th plague, the terrifying, palpable darkness, was a chilling prelude to the most dreadful, the 10th, the death of the firstborn. This final, devastating judgment would finally shatter Pharaoh's stubborn will and pave the way for Israel's liberation. But for Israel, it was also a night of divine instruction, a sacred covenant, and the institution of a perpetual memorial. The Lord commanded them to prepare. Each household was to select a lamb, spotless and unblemished, a year-old male to be sacrificed. Its blood was to be smeared on the doorposts and lintels of their homes. This blood was the sign. When the angel of death, the final instrument of divine judgment, swept through the land of Egypt at midnight, claiming every firstborn from Pharaoh's heir on his throne to the captive in the dungeon, and even the firstborn of livestock, it would pass over the homes marked with the lamb's blood. This was the Passover, a solemn feast to be celebrated for generations, a timeless reminder of God's redemptive power. That night, Egypt was plunged into an abyss of unparalleled wailing and grief, a universal lamentation that rose from every single household, for there was no home without its dead. The chilling silence of the previous darkness was replaced by the deafening sound of human anguish. Pharaoh himself, his heart finally broken, not by reason, but by an unbearable anguish he could neither command nor avert, summoned Moses and Aaron in the dead of night. His words, once defiant, were now born of desperation. "Up, leave my people, you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you have requested. Take your flocks and herds as you have said, and go. And also bless me." In a single tumultuous night, 4 centuries of soul-crushing bondage were undone. The Israelites, hastily gathering their unleavened bread that had no time to rise, reflecting the urgency of their departure and meager belongings, streamed out of Egypt. They were a vast, awe-inspiring multitude of 600,000 men, besides women and children, their hearts swelling with a tumultuous mix of fear, exhilarating freedom, and overwhelming relief. They left not empty-handed. The Egyptians, desperate for them to depart, had showered them with gold, silver, and clothing, a divine recompense for their years of forced labor. The exodus had begun not with a whimper, but with a roar of liberation, echoing across the newly quieted land of Egypt. The parted path, a miracle at the sea. God, in his infinite wisdom and protection, did not lead them by the direct route through the land of the Philistines, for he knew their spirits, still fragile from generations of bondage, would falter at the sight of immediate warfare. Instead, he led them by the desert road toward the Red Sea, a path that seemed to lead directly into an insurmountable barrier. And the Lord himself went ahead of them, a glorious and tangible manifestation of his presence, a pillar of cloud by day to guide their journey through the scorching desert, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light and warmth, so that they could travel both day and night without faltering. This visible, ever-present pillar of the divine was a constant assurance, a tangible link between heaven and earth, a beacon of hope for a newly freed people. But Pharaoh's hardened heart, though momentarily shattered by grief, began to mend with renewed arrogance. The bitter taste of relinquished power, once absolute, now rankled in his mouth. "What have we done?" he fumed, his voice thick with fury. "That we have let Israel go from serving us." He marshaled his chariots, 600 of his finest, along with all the chariots of Egypt, and a vast, formidable army. He pursued the fleeing Israelites with a vengeful fury, convinced he could reclaim his human property. The Israelites, encamped by the Red Sea, saw the dust clouds of Pharaoh's approaching army. The joyful cries of liberation turned to agonizing shrieks of terror. Trapped between the mighty, impassable sea and the vengeful, unstoppable might of Egypt, their newfound freedom seemed a cruel illusion, a bitter taste of hope instantly revoked. "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die?" they cried to Moses, their voices raw with panic. "It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert." Their faith, still nascent, trembled on the brink of despair. But Moses, his own faith forged in the burning bush and tested by 10 plagues, stood firm amidst the chaos. He raised his voice above their lamentations, echoing the divine promise. "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. For the Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." His words were a balm to their panicked souls, a reminder that their deliverer was greater than any earthly foe. And then came the command from the Almighty, a voice that pierced through the clamor of human fear and the roar of the approaching army. "Tell the Israelites to move on. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water so that the Israelites can go through on dry ground." Moses, with unwavering obedience, stretched out his hand over the sea. All that night, the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind, a mighty, unseen force that roared through the darkness, turning the seabed into miraculously dry land. The waters, once an unbroken expanse, were divided, forming colossal, shimmering walls on their right and on their left. It was a sight of unimaginable grandeur and terrifying power. The vast, unyielding sea, a symbol of impassable boundaries and the end of all hope, now stood miraculously parted, revealing a path where none had existed, a divine highway through the very heart of the ocean. The Israelites, a vast multitude of men, women, and children, numbering in the hundreds of thousands, walked through the sea on dry ground. The towering, crystalline walls of water, held back by an unseen power, shimmered above them, a breathtaking testament to divine sovereignty. They marched through the heart of the ocean, protected by the very hand that had created the deep, their fear slowly giving way to awe and reverence. The destruction of Pharaoh's army and the song of redemption. Pharaoh's army, blinded by unyielding pride and insatiable vengeance, plunged headlong into the miraculous path, pursuing the fleeing Israelites into the heart of the watery chasm. The thundering hooves of their horses, the clatter of their chariots, the defiant shouts of Egypt's elite warriors, all rushed forward, convinced of their ultimate victory, certain that they would reclaim their chattel. But the ground beneath them, though dry for a time, began to soften, turning to thick, clinging mire. Their chariot wheels jammed, their horses struggled, and their relentless advance slowed to a desperate crawl. The pillar of cloud, which had faithfully guided Israel, now moved behind them, casting a divine shadow that obscured the Egyptians' vision and filled their hearts with an unearthly dread. Chaos began to reign in the ranks of Pharaoh's mighty army. Then, at the break of dawn, as the last of the Israelites emerged onto the eastern shore, their feet touching the solid ground of freedom, the Lord commanded Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen." Moses again obeyed, his hand raised towards the heavens. The towering walls of water, which had held back the immense power of the ocean, began to crash inward with a deafening roar. Pharaoh's entire army, the chariots, the horsemen, and every single soldier, the very embodiment of human oppression, was utterly engulfed by the returning tide. Not one of them survived. The sea had become their tomb, a monumental and eternal testament to God's justice and Israel's triumphant deliverance. On the other side, the Israelites watched, their hearts overflowing with profound awe, unspeakable gratitude, and a newfound, unshakable faith. They saw the bodies of their oppressors washed ashore, a final, undeniable proof of their complete and irreversible liberation. Miriam, the prophetess, Moses' sister, took up a tambourine, and all the women followed her, dancing and singing a mighty song of triumph and praise, a melody of redemption that would echo through generations. "I will sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has hurled into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will praise him, my father's God, and I will exalt him." The end of bondage. The birth of a nation. The crossing of the Red Sea was more than a miraculous escape. It was the birth of a nation, forged in the crucible of divine intervention. It was the definitive act that severed the chains of slavery, not just physically but spiritually, and transformed Israel from a subjugated people into a free nation, bound not by human decree, but by an eternal, divine covenant. The vast, intimidating desert, once a place of fear and uncertainty, now stretched before them as a crucible for their burgeoning faith, a wilderness where God would continue to guide, sustain, and profoundly transform them through his laws and his presence. This epic journey from soul-crushing slavery to exhilarating freedom, marked by the thunder of 10 plagues and the impossible, awe-inspiring parting of the waters, stands as a timeless narrative of God's unwavering faithfulness, his irresistible power, and his profound love for his chosen people. It teaches that no chain is too strong, no oppressor too mighty, and no obstacle too vast for the redeeming power of the Almighty. The Red Sea, a terrifying symbol of insurmountable barriers, became a miraculous highway of salvation, a watery grave for tyranny, and a sacred baptism for a people stepping into their grand, God-given destiny. It is a story that echoes through the ages, reminding all humanity that even when trapped between an unyielding force and an impassable barrier, the hand of God can part the impossible path, leading his people to freedom, to purpose, and to a promised land. The Exodus is a story of ultimate liberation and divine power. What part of this incredible journey inspires you the most, and how does it speak to challenges in your own life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Bible in Motion and hit the notification bell for more epic stories of faith and redemption.